Alright, what's going on, guys? What we have to go over today is absolutely awesome. The official Elden Ring art books have been released, at least in digital format, and these things completely change the way we can look at the game, because it gives us insight into the original vision that they had for the world of Elden Ring. And these books came with over 300 pieces of original concept art, so what I want to do today is go through some of my favorites, and show you ones that are vastly different than what we see in the final product. Because while these are original concept arts, and technically not canon to the lore that the game provides, it can allow us to explore some of the mysteries we have, and personally, I just find them incredibly interesting. But before we get into that today, I need to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by the Ridge Wallet. I was recently sent the new Forged Ember wallet and key case, and they're absolutely awesome. And there's several reasons for that. Number one, they're sleek and stylish. Number two, they're extremely compact and durable, and they come with a lifetime warranty, so you can see why they have 50,000 5-star reviews. So if you want to upgrade your wallet game, hop over to ridge.com/Ziostorm for up to 40% off through December 22nd. Once again, that's ridge.com/Ziostorm. I can't recommend these enough, so thank you to Ridge for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back into it. To begin looking through the art within these books, I want to do it chronologically, and go in the order that we encounter them within the game. So let's start with Limgrave. The book has several depictions of Limgrave, many that we've already seen in times of pre-release, and that we can actually find within the game itself, but there's one that stood out to me quite a bit. In this image here that shows the player finding a new map, we have several notable changes, the most important of which is the appearance of the Erd Tree. We can see that in this image the Erd Tree is on fire and splitting, but more importantly it doesn't have that golden glow to it. It looks like a normal tree, and this is one of the only depictions I could find of it not looking like it does in the game. Now, something that we've seen many times before that also stands out is that the Divine Bridge is fully formed. That's not exactly a surprise because we know that this was a late decision, given that even back in the leaked trailer, we can still see it all in one piece. This early depiction of Stormveil Castle is really cool as well, because it shows the castle in a state before all the golden additions, with architecture much closer to Castle Morn. But what I found really cool is that it shows a bridge connecting Stormveil to the Chapel of Anticipation, which was a big question I always had in the game of why there was no connection there, because it just kind of sits on top of this plateau with absolutely no way of access whatsoever. A while back, it was discovered that Hugh's quest was going to be different than what we currently have in the game. It would involve the player finding him out in Limgrave, and gaining his trust before he would eventually come to Roundtable Hold. And in this image of various chests and ladders, we can actually see the concepts of this quest in the top left corner, with the player character talking to Blacksmith Hugh in a Limgrave shack. And I think that's pretty cool. I would have liked to see more out of this quest. But moving on into Stormveil Castle itself, this one stood out quite a bit. If we look to the left in the area that would be Margit's boss arena, we can firstly see that the fog is white like it was back in Dark Souls, but also that there's a troll in the boss arena. So I don't know if we were supposed to fight a troll alongside Margit or a troll was originally supposed to be the boss itself, but it's interesting nonetheless. The other depictions of the interior of Stormveil Castle kind of follow what we can find in the final game. There are definitely some differences, but nothing really significant until we get to Godric's arena. At first glance, it definitely does look the same as the final product, but it's missing the dead dragon that Godric grafts onto himself. But in the center of the room, we can see this statue of the Age of Plenty. Iconography we can find in the Chapel of Anticipation. Very different than the statue that the dragon crashed into, but perhaps they needed one for the dragon to get impaled on, and a statue with no sharp edges wouldn't have done the trick. As we move into Liurnia, much of it is the same as what we can find in the final version. And a lot of this concept art might also seem familiar to you, because some of it's been shown before. However, there definitely are some things to point out here. Number one, the gate on the bridge of Liurnia is open, and like the Divine Tower of Limgrave, the bridge itself is still fully intact. Now, while there may not be any significant lore mysteries solved here, the artwork of this place is just awesome, especially in Renala's boss room. It really drives home the creepy atmosphere. But you can see that it is almost totally different on the outside than what we get in the final game. Now, one piece that I absolutely loved was the original depiction of Caria Manor. It looks way different than what we got in the final game, but I really like how the architecture itself looks pretty grounded, but then the nature is just taking over wildly. We don't get a whole lot of depictions of Caelid in the Swamp of Aeonia, however from the few that we do have, things are pretty consistent. The Bestial Sanctum looks very interesting here, obviously rearranged but still true to the idea, but there was one in this section that stood out to me quite a bit though. The depiction of Radahn's arena focuses so much on the crashed ship in the distance, and this is still one of the biggest mysteries we have in the game. This ship stays in the game, it's even on the map, but as to why it's important we still have no idea. Maybe if the DLC takes us outside the lands between, we'll finally get some answers. But this next picture raises a few questions. This is Sellia, town of sorcery, and it's a lot different. First of all, we can see this giant Golden Order statue right in the middle of the town, which as you can see no longer exists. But it raises a few questions about why this was the original idea, given that the laws of Golden Order and sorcery are at odds. But we know Sellia is a town of secrets, and our quest involves unraveling those secrets. Now normally we would have to go around the town and find 4 pyres that need to be lit, but back then it was a different idea. As you can see, they're not pyres anymore, but windmills. I do think lighting the fires fits with the modern theme much better than windmills would, but I would like to see how that would play out. It's really interesting stuff. From what I can tell, Leyndell and Altus Plateau remain virtually the same. You can tell that their vision for this part of the game specifically was very clear, and they knew what they wanted it to be. In fact, a lot of the artwork surrounding Leyndell appears very recent, at least in my opinion. But several shots of the outer walls raise some questions to me. I really like this take of the battlefield being covered in these red spider lilies, very symbolic of the bloodshed that went on here. But I'm not sure what to make of this one. I'm assuming this is the outer rampart wall, but the architecture is all different, and there's fire bursting out of the towers. So you guys will have to let me know your thoughts on that. The mountaintops of the giants look like an entirely different area in the concept art. The giants have this red glow of blood to them, which makes this scene look a lot more brutal. Castle Sol looks much more put together and much more realistic. But here's something interesting, take a look at this picture. Like I mentioned at the beginning, the Erd tree here looks like a normal tree, but the Giant's Flame Cauldron is totally different. It looks like it's made of bronze or copper. It's already lit and it has a lid on it. Super interesting, but let's compare it to the next shot. The picture on the right is much closer to what we have in the final version of the game, so we can see how much change this concept underwent. Now, something I couldn't help but notice as well is how similar this looks to the shot of the Bestial Sanctum. There's a lot of theories out there that Caelid and the Mountaintops were once connected, and the similarities in the architecture here really adds fuel to that fire. Now, as far as I could tell, I couldn't find any concept art for the consecrated snowfield, but we do have this picture here which depicts the waygate to the Haligtree. I really like the way this looks. It's so mysterious, and it really captures this feeling of mystery that surrounds Alphael. But the art of the Haligtree itself is virtually identical to what we see in the final product, and they do a fantastic job at capturing that withering beauty of it. There's honestly not a lot to say about these other than just admiring them, but there was one that stuck out to me quite a bit. All the symbolism along this wall here is extremely detailed and just really cool overall. But like the Haligtree, Farum Azula as well did not deviate a whole lot from its concept art. But overall, the depictions of this place are just incredible. Elden Ring already has that ability for every angle of the game to look like a painting, and I think that's only attributable to the fact that the concept art is so good. But there are a few things I would like to point out. This statue is the source of so much mystery in the lore, and in these concept arts it's glowing with this greenish gold hue, but when we actually see it in the final game, it simply is just a statue. Clearly, they meant for it to have some sort of power, some kind of significance beyond simply being a statue for decoration, and I wish I knew what it was. Now, this shot of Farum Azula here is probably one of my favorite pieces in the entire book. There's so much going on here. It almost doesn't even look like Farum Azula, but it is. There's so much color and there's moss growing all over the stones, even a little forest down in the bottom left. This one is just awesome. When it comes to the artwork of the Eternal Cities, this is a time when I'm gonna say you need to go look at these on your own in 4K, because every picture has so many details and communicates the eerie feeling of this place phenomenally, and they are very different than what we see in the final game. I'd wager that these were some of the earliest concepts that were done, and these right here are what I would buy the book for. Mogwin Palace looks a lot different, I will say. It's consumed by fire, but something that you may notice is that it doesn't have that cosmic sky, but instead has sunlight filtering through like a normal cavern, and I find that very interesting. But one picture that stood out to me in this section is this single depiction of Deeproot Depths, and the only way I know that this is Deeproot is because if you go back to the 1.0 version of the game, the entire area is covered in this greenish gold light like you can see in this image here. But what's weird is that it has these giant skulls, even this giant hand poking out in the ground, incredibly different than what we see in the final version. Now, I could speculate for a long time about what I think is going on there, but like I said, this is just concept art. It's not canon to the final version, so at the end of the day, it would be kind of basic. baseless. But those are the major ones I wanted to show you guys today. I've been nerding out about this art book ever since it came out this morning, and I wish so bad it was coming out in the US. Now, I'm not sure what their policy is on sharing the link to these files, so I'm not going to have it in the description here, but I will have the link to my Discord in the description, so you can hit me up over there. But this was only a tiny taste of what this has. Like I said, there's over 300 images, and almost all of these were only from book 1. Book 2 has a lot more of the characters, which are super cool on their own. However, the primary differences that we can find between the concept art and the final game are in the landscapes and environments. But either way though, I hope you enjoyed this video today. If you did, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here. The Game Awards are coming up in 1 week. I will be streaming it. There's a big chance we get some major FromSoftware announcements there, so you'll definitely want to tune in. But with all that, I'll catch you in the next one.